My body's too tiny. I'm not breeding material, that's what my told Garrett McKenna before they married. She'd shown him the medical documents translated from her homeland. For doctors' opinions, all saying the same thing. Conception highly unlikely. Carrying to term even less so. I need you to understand what you're getting, she'd said, her voice quiet but firm. I can work. I can be a partner to you, but I can't give you children. If that's what you need, find another wife. He looked her in the eye and said, I don't need children. I need help running this ranch. That's enough. She believed him. Married him. Work beside him for 2 months without incident. Then one night he came to her room with whiskey on his breath and grief in his eyes. The anniversary of his first wife's death. Just tonight, he'd said, I just don't want to be alone tonight. She'd hesitated. He'd pressed. It's not like anything will come of it. You said so yourself, so she'd let him stay. Let him seek comfort in her body, told herself it was safe because science said so. Now she stood 3 months later, visibly pregnant, watching him stumble over excuses. You knew, she said, each word precisely placed. You knew the doctors said unlikely, not impossible. You knew there was a chance, however small, and you took it anyway because you needed comfort and I was convenient. I swear I didn't think. No, you didn't think. That's exactly the problem. She stepped closer, her small frame trembling with a fury that made her seem larger than she was. You gambled with my body, my life, and now I'm the one who has to survive what you were so sure couldn't happen. Garrett's hat twisted in his hands like he was wringing out a wet rag. His face had gone pale the moment she'd confronted him in the yard. The sun was high and hot. Dust devils spun across the dry earth. Everything felt sharp and unforgiving. I didn't gamble, he said weakly. I believed the doctors just like you did. The difference, Mai said, her voice dropping to something cold and dangerous, is that I wasn't the one who pushed for it. You came to my room. You convinced me it was safe. You used my own medical condition to justify taking what you wanted. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. I thought we both wanted. What I wanted was to keep our agreement. Her hand moved to her belly, to the swell that had become impossible to hide. What I wanted was to feel safe for the first time in my life. Do you know what it's like, Garrett? To be told your whole life that your body is wrong, too small, too fragile, not made for the things women's bodies are supposed to do. She wasn't crying. Wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. But her voice shook anyway. I came to America because in China I had nothing. No family who valued me, no prospects, just doctors telling me I was built wrong and men telling me I wasn't woman enough. And then you offered me something different. A partnership, respect, safety. You still have that, I don't. The words exploded out of her. I don't have safety anymore. Do you understand what this pregnancy means for someone with my body? The doctor said conception was unlikely because my hips are too narrow. My entire frame isn't designed for this. Her breathing was coming faster, the fear she'd been holding back for weeks breaking through the anger. If I'm lucky, the baby will be small enough that I might survive the delivery. If I'm not lucky, I die the way your first wife died, and you'll bury me on that hill next to her and tell yourself it wasn't your fault because the doctors said it probably wouldn't happen. Garrett's face crumpled. Don't say that. Don't even think that. Why not? It's the truth, isn't it? She laughed, but it came out bitter and broken. You took a calculated risk with my life, and now we both have to live with the consequences. Except if things go wrong, only one of us actually dies. The silence that fell between them was suffocating. A hawk circled overhead. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed. The ranch continued its daily rhythm, indifferent to the human drama playing out in its dust. I'm sorry, Garrett's voice came out barely above a whisper. God, Mai, I'm so sorry. You're right about all of it. I told myself it was safe because I wanted to believe it was safe because I needed. He stopped, started again. That night, the anniversary of Clara's death. I couldn't be alone with the memories. And you were there, and I convinced myself that since the doctors said it was unlikely, that meant it was impossible. I heard what I wanted to hear, yes, I said. You did, and now you're paying for my selfishness, yes, I am. He looked up at her then, and she saw something in his eyes she hadn't expected. Not just guilt, not just fear, something deeper, something that looked like genuine horror at what he'd done. What do you need from me? He asked. Right now. What do you need? The question caught her off guard. She'd expected excuses, deflection, maybe anger thrown back at her for not being more careful herself. She hadn't expected this quiet surrender to her anger. This acknowledgement of his fault. I need you to stop pretending this is something that just happened to us, she said finally. This is something you made happen, and I need you to own that I own it. His voice was steady now, clear. This is my fault. My choice. My failure to think beyond what I wanted in that moment. And whatever happens, whatever you need from this point forward, I'm here. Not because I'm trying to make it right, I can't make this right, but because you shouldn't have to face this alone. I wanted to stay angry. Wanted to keep the rage burning hot enough to protect her from the fear underneath. But something in his words, in the way he stood there accepting her fury without defending himself, made a crack in her armor. I'm terrified, she whispered. Every day I'm more terrified. My body is doing something it wasn't supposed to be able to do, and I don't know if it can finish what it started. I know, do you? Do you really know what it's like to feel your body changing in ways that might kill you? To feel something growing inside you that might be the last thing you ever feel? He shook his head. No, I don't. But I watched Clara go through it. Watched her get more scared every day. Watched her know something was wrong and not be able to stop it. His voice broke. And I swore I'd never put another woman through that. And then I did it anyway. I did exactly what I swore I'd never do. The admission hung in the hot Montana air between them. So what now? I asked. You feel guilty. I feel terrified. And we both pretend that's enough? No, Garrett looked at her directly. Now I do everything I can to keep you alive. I take you to every doctor within 100 miles. I find out what we're dealing with and how to survive it. I don't leave your side. I don't let you work yourself to exhaustion. I don't let you face this alone. That doesn't fix what you did. No, it doesn't. Nothing fixes what I did. But it's what I'm offering anyway. I studied his face, looked for deception, for manipulation, for the signs she'd learned to read in men who said one thing and meant another. She didn't find them. What she found instead was something that might have been genuine remorse, genuine fear, genuine determination to do better, even though better would never be enough. The nearest doctor who might know anything about difficult pregnancies is in Billings, she said slowly. 3 days ride, then we leave tomorrow. The ranch can wait. You can't. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she could keep working, keep pretending everything was fine. But the truth was, she was exhausted. The pregnancy was taking more out of her than she'd expected, and the fear was eating her alive from the inside. Okay, she said finally. Tomorrow. Garrett nodded, started to turn away, then stopped. What? I know sorry doesn't mean anything right now, but I am sorrier than I've ever been for anything in my life. She didn't respond. Just watched him walk back toward the barn, his shoulders carrying the weight of what he'd done. And I stood alone in the dust, one hand on her belly, feeling the impossible life moving inside her, and wondered if sorry would matter at all if she didn't survive to hear him say it again. The road to Billings stretched out like a punishment. 3 days of hard riding that my changing body barely tolerated. Garrett had wanted to take the wagon, make it easier on her, but that would have added 2 more days to the journey. 2 more days of not knowing. 2 more days of fear eating her alive from the inside. So they rode, and every jostle, every bump, every moment in the saddle was a reminder of what her body was doing, what it might not survive doing. They stopped at noon on the first day. Garrett had packed food, but Mai couldn't eat. The nausea that had plagued her for weeks was worse now. Everything smelled wrong, tasted wrong. Her body rejecting even the basics of survival. You need to eat something, Garrett said, holding out dried beef and bread. I need to not vomit for 5 minutes. She sat in the shade of a scrub oak, breathing through her mouth. That would be nice. He crouched beside her, not touching. Just present. The doctor in Billings, Doc Reed, he delivered difficult babies during the war. Saw things most doctors never see. If anyone knows how to help you, it's him, and if he doesn't. The question hung between them like smoke. Then we find someone who does, Garrett said, but his voice lacked conviction. They both knew the truth. There weren't many doctors who understood bodies like Mai's. Bodies that broke the rules. Bodies that did impossible things. Night fell hard and cold. They made camp near a creek. Garrett built a fire while Mai sat wrapped in a blanket, watching flames dance against darkness. She could feel the baby moving now, small flutters that shouldn't have been possible, life insisting on itself despite every medical opinion that said it couldn't exist. Can I ask you something? Garrett's voice came quiet through the darkness. You can ask, do you hate me? Mai was silent for a long moment. The fire cracked. The creek whispered over stones. Somewhere an owl called into the night. I don't know, she said finally. I want to. It would be easier if I could just hate you and be done with it. But I keep remembering the 2 months before. How you treated me like a partner. Like I mattered beyond what I could do for you. How you never made me feel too small or too fragile or wrong. She pulled the blanket tighter. And then I remember that night. How you used the very thing that made me vulnerable, my medical condition, to justify taking what you wanted. And I don't know which version of you is real. Both, Garrett said. That's the hell of it. Both versions are real. I did respect you. I do respect you. And I also used you. Failed you. Put my needs above your safety. He poked at the fire with a stick. People aren't just one thing. We're capable of being decent and being selfish. Sometimes in the same breath. That's not comforting. It's not meant to be. It's just true. Mai laid down on her bedroll, staring up at the stars scattered across the enormous Montana sky. If I die, she said, I need you to promise me something. Don't. Promise me. Her voice was steel. If I die and the baby lives, you don't raise it with guilt. You don't make that child carry the weight of what happened between us. You let them just be. Garrett's voice came thick with emotion. You're not going to die. You don't know that. I know. I won't let it happen. I'll tear the world apart before I let you die because of what I did. You might not have a choice. The second day was worse. Mai's back ached from riding. Her hips screamed with every movement. The baby pressed against organs that had nowhere to move. Her body was running out of room for the impossible thing growing inside it. Garrett watched her with increasing worry. We can stop. Rest for a day? No, she gritted her teeth, kept riding. We're almost there. I can make it, but she wasn't sure she could. Every mile felt like it might be her last. Every breath a struggle. Her body waging war against itself, trying to nurture life while simultaneously being destroyed by it. They reached Billings at sunset on the third day. The town was bigger than Mai expected. Real buildings, real streets, real people who stared at her as they rode past. A woman of her heritage was uncommon. A woman like her visibly pregnant was a spectacle. Garrett ignored the stairs, led them straight to a neat house on the edge of town with a shingle that read, Dr. Alvin Reed, Medicine and Surgery. He helped Mai down from her horse. She could barely stand. 3 days of riding had taken everything she had left. The door opened before they could knock. A man in his 50s stood there, grey-haired and sharp-eyed. He took one look at Mai, and his expression shifted from curiosity to professional concern. You're the woman from the telegram, he said. The one the doctor said couldn't conceive. That's me, Mai said, her voice weaker than she intended. The medical impossibilities. Well, Dr. Reed said, stepping aside to let them in. Let's see if we can keep you alive long enough to prove them all wrong. Dr. Reed's examination room smelled like carbolic acid and old leather. Mai sat on the examination table while the doctor's hands pressed carefully against her belly, feeling the shape of what shouldn't exist. His face gave nothing away, just professional assessment, clinical observation, the kind of blank expression that terrified her more than concern would have. Garrett stood by the door, hat crushed between his hands, watching every movement the doctor made like he could will a good outcome into existence through sheer attention. "How far along did you say?" Dr. Reed asked, his fingers tracing the curve of her abdomen. "For months, maybe closer to 5 now, and the doctors in your homeland, what specifically did they say about your condition?" Mai recited it from memory. She'd heard it enough times. Narrow pelvic opening. Delicate constitution. Small frame inconsistent with successful pregnancy. High risk of miscarriage if conception somehow occurred. Higher risk of maternal death if pregnancy progressed to term. Dr. Reed made a humming sound, continued his examination, listened to her heartbeat, checked her pulse, asked her to breathe deeply while he listened to her lungs. Finally, he stepped back. "Get dressed. Then we'll talk." Those 4 words dropped like stones into water. "We'll talk, not everything's fine, not you'll be okay, just we'll talk." Umai's hand shook as she buttoned her dress. Garrett moved to help her, but she waved him off. She could still do this much herself. Still had this much dignity left. They sat in Dr. Reed's office. Books lined every wall, medical texts with intimidating titles. Anatomy drawings that showed bodies split open, secrets exposed. Mai tried not to look at them. "I'm going to be honest with you," Dr. Reed said, folding his hands on his desk. "Because dishonesty helps no one in situations like this." Mai's breath caught. Garrett's hand found hers. She let him take it this time. "Your doctors weren't wrong about the risks. Your pelvic structure is dangerously narrow. That baby is going to have a difficult time making its way into the world. Your small frame means there is very little room for error, so I'm going to die." Mai said it flatly. "Might as well face it head on." "I didn't say that." Dr. Reed's eyes were kind but firm. "I said there are risks, significant ones. But I've delivered babies in field hospitals during the war with less resources than we have here. I've seen women survive things that should have killed them because they were determined to live. The question isn't whether it's possible for you to survive. It's whether you're willing to fight for it." "Of course, she's willing," Garrett said, his voice rough. "She's the strongest person I've ever met. Inner strength is what I'm talking about." Dr. Reed leaned forward. "Mrs. McKenna, the next 4 months are going to be harder than anything you've experienced. Your body is going to be under immense strain. You're going to be in pain more often than not. You're going to wonder if it's worth it. And when labor comes, you're going to have to push through fear and pain and the very real possibility of death to bring this baby into the world." He paused, letting that sink in. "So, I need to know, are you prepared for that? Because if you're not, if you want to try to end this pregnancy now while you still can, I won't judge you. No one would judge you. You didn't choose this situation." Mai felt Garrett's hand tighten on hers, felt him wanting to speak, to protest, to insist she had to keep fighting. She squeezed back, telling him without words to be quiet. This was her choice, her body, her decision. "How do I improve my chances?" she asked. Dr. Reed smiled slightly. "That's the right question. First, complete bed rest starting now. No more ranch work. No more riding. Your body needs every bit of energy focused on keeping that baby growing and keeping you alive. Second, I want you here in Billings for the last month of pregnancy. Close to me. Close to the medical supplies I'll need if things go wrong during delivery we can't afford." Garrett started. "I'm not finished." Dr. Reed's voice was sharp. "Third, you eat even when you don't want to. Even when you're nauseous. That baby is taking everything from you. You need to give yourself something back. Fourth, you accept help. From your husband, from me, from anyone who offers it. Pride will kill you faster than any medical condition." I nodded slowly. "And if I do all that, what are my chances?" "Honestly? 50/50ths. Maybe 60/40ths if we're lucky and nothing unexpected happens or the numbers hit like physical blows. 50/50ths. A coin flip. Her life balanced on chance and luck and the whims of a body that had never worked right. "Those are better odds than I expected," she said quietly. Garrett made a sound like he'd been punched. "Better than? That means. It means I have a chance." She looked at him. Really looked at him. Saw the fear and guilt and desperate hope all tangled together in his face. "Before we came here, I thought I was already dead. I thought this baby was a death sentence. But Dr. Reed is saying I might survive." "Mighty, that's more than I had yesterday." "Mrs. McKenna is right," Dr. Reed said. "Hope is a medical tool just like any other. Used correctly, it can keep you alive when your body wants to give up." They left the office as the sun was setting. Billings was quieter now. Shops closing, people heading home to families and warm dinners and lives that didn't hang in the balance. Garrett had rented them a room at the boarding house, small but clean, a real bed, a window that looked out over the street. Mai sat on the edge of the mattress, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. "I'm sorry," Garrett said from the doorway. "You keep saying that because I keep meaning it." He came into the room, closed the door, stood there looking lost. 50-50th odds because of what I did. Because I couldn't control myself for one night. We can't change it now." Mai lay back on the bed, one hand on her belly. "We can only deal with what is. And what is that I have a chance. Not a guarantee, not a sure thing, but a chance. I'll take care of you." Garrett's voice was fierce. "Whatever you need, however long it takes, I'll make sure you have everything. I know you will. Because if you don't, I'll haunt you for the rest of your life." It was meant to be a joke, dark humor to cut the tension, but Garrett's face crumpled. "Don't," he whispered. "Don't even joke about that. I can't. If you die because of me, then you'll live with it." Mai's voice was harder now. "Just like I'm living with the consequences of your choices. Just like this baby will live with whatever happens. We don't get to choose our consequences, Garrett. We only get to choose how we face them." He nodded, wiped his eyes, tried to pull himself together. "Get some sleep," Mai said. "Tomorrow we figure out how to get through the next 4 months." For months passed like a slow-burning fire. Mai stayed in Billings, confined to bed rest in a room that became smaller every day. Garrett worked odd jobs around town to pay for the room and the doctor. Every evening he came back smelling like sawdust or horse sweat or whatever work he'd found that day. Every evening he brought her food she could barely stomach and sat with her while she forced it down anyway. Her body changed in ways that terrified her. The baby grew larger than Dr. Reed expected. Her belly stretched tight as a drum. Her hips ached constantly. Some days the pain was so bad she couldn't move without crying out. Some nights she lay awake certain she was dying, that this was it, that her body was finally giving up. But morning always came, and she was still breathing. Dr. Reed visited twice a week, checked her progress, measured the baby, listened to 2 heartbeats, hers and the impossibly strong flutter of the child inside her. Each time he looked slightly more surprised that she was still alive. "You're tougher than I gave you credit for," he said during one visit. "I don't feel tough," Mai admitted. "I feel like I'm being slowly torn apart from the inside." "That's what birth is," Dr. Reed said. "Your body breaking itself open to let something new into the world. It's violent and painful and absolutely miraculous that any of us survive it." The labor started on a Tuesday morning in early spring. Mai woke to a pain that stole her breath, felt a liquid warmth between her legs, knew immediately what was happening. "Garrett," she said, her voice calm despite the terror coursing through her. "Get Dr. Reed." Now she'd never seen him move so fast. The next 12 hours were hell. There was no other word for it. Her body fought against itself. Muscles that didn't know how to relax, bones that wouldn't open far enough. Pain that came in waves so intense she couldn't scream, could only endure. Dr. Reed worked with steady hands and quiet confidence. "You're doing well," he said, though his face told a different story. "The baby's positioned right, but your pelvis, it's going to be close. Such a small word for the difference between life and death." Garrett stayed by her head, holding her hand, letting her squeeze until his bones ground together. He didn't complain, didn't flinch, just stayed, steady, present, exactly what he'd promised to be. I can't, my gasped during a particularly brutal contraction. Garrett, I can't do this, yes, you can. His voice was firm, certain. You have more fight in you than anyone I know. You can do this. I'm not strong enough. You crossed an ocean alone. You survived being told your body was wrong. You survived for months of hell carrying a baby that shouldn't exist. You are strong enough. You've always been strong enough. Another wave of pain. Another push. Another moment of her body tearing itself apart. I see the head. Dr. Reed said. One more push, Mrs. McKenna. One more and you're done. I didn't think she had one more push left, didn't think she had anything left. But she reached down into some